I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here we talk about true crime and psychology. Thank you so much for joining. Let's hop right into today's topic. Let's go. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining. Today, I wanted to talk about the Julio Foolio trial. I have been watching over on Trial TV. I have their channel linked in the description. I've enjoyed watching over there. He also does recaps, and Jenny is actually a mod over there. And so, welcome. Thank you so much for joining in. There has been some expert testimony today by a clinical psychologist and a forensic clinical neuropsychologist. And so I wanted to break down some of that testimony. One of the defendants, he actually testified as well. So Shawn, one of the youngest defendants, he testified, and I have some thoughts because um I'm not I understand why he wanted to show remorse and why he wanted to get up and testify, but let's do a little background of this case. All right. Let me make this bigger. All right, there we go. And so the incident was June 23rd of 2024. And there are four defendants that were just on trial. The victim is Charles Jones, and the defendants are Davion Murphy, Rashad Murphy, Isaiah Chance, and Shawn Gathright. And he's currently 20, Isaiah's 23, Rashad is 32, and Davion is 29. The intellectual capacity of Davion and Isaiah has been raised, and I have some thoughts. So we will definitely talk about this. This incident happened down in Florida. I believe it happened in Jacksonville, Florida. Um, but maybe I think it happened in Tampa. So the incident I think actually happened in Tampa, but they were from Jacksonville. And I actually go to Jacksonville normally like once a year. I was not aware that there was a whole kind of gang scene in that area. I wasn't aware. And one of the witnesses today, I think for Isaiah Chance, his former stepfather just provided like the judge actually asked him questions outside of the presence of the jury because he had done some work in the community and seemed to know a lot about what was happening with the youth. And so the judge actually asked him additional questions. And so they were convicted of capital of capital M. So they are in the penalty phase, where the jury will decide if they get the DP or if they get life in prison without the possibility of parole. And so, either way, these defendants will die in prison. It'll either be up to the state or it'll be a natural cause later on. All these defendants are fighting for life in prison. Um, and they were all tried together. And with these types of cases, sometimes they want to separate them out. So Alicia, y'all know me in names, because she was convicted. So there was another person that was involved, and but she was, and y'all know me in names because I have it. It's not showing for me what her name was, but there was a female defendant that her case was separated out, and she was found guilty, I want to say, of manslaughter. Like, she was found guilty of something lesser than what they were convicted of. And so we will see. Let me know if y'all have general questions about this case. Yes, I thought it was Alicia. Thank you. Let me know if y'all have any general questions. This has been very, very interesting to watch. So, they start out with mitigation, and drill rap, I first want to talk about the drill music scene. So it started out in Chicago, and this is a type of music. And it's not that the music makes people do anything, but really what this music does is it's very dark, it's very violent, and people pretty much call out their ops or their opponents. They call them out by name, and they kind of taunt their enemies in a way where sometimes if somebody was unalived by the other side, they will dance on their graves. And all of that can be seen as very disrespectful. And Pop Smoke was a very famous drill rapper. And so it went from Chicago to New York, and it's since kind of spread. And the case that we're talking about is out of Florida. Trevor Noah, with when he was with The Daily Show, he actually did a like not in he talked about drill rap and the people that like that music. So if my son was listening to very violent, I don't know, like if he was listening to certain types of music, if you tell somebody to not listen to something, it makes them want it more. But I would at least want to sit down and have a conversation with my child. And some of these individuals, it went beyond the music and it actually went to the streets where there were these actual, like, people died in the middle of all of this. And there were innocent victims that were placed at risk because they were not only found guilty um, of capital redrum or red rum, they were also found guilty of attempted. So there were other people in the car. There were other people in the neighborhood, and so all of that made it to where, like, this was an unsafe situation. There were two individuals that were in their hotel room at the time of the incident, and they were one person I think was hit with some like shrapnel from one of the bullets, and so like innocent people were put at risk that had nothing to do with any of this scene. They weren't affiliated with anything like that. And the state is seeking the DP based on certain aggravators. And one of the individuals has two out of four aggravators. And a few of them have all four aggravators. And so let's see, yeah, it burned the woman's leg. Yeah, that was in the hotel room. Yes. All right. And so once again, if you want to go to YouTube and check out, if you type in drill rap, The Daily Show, the episode that they did talking about it will come up. And so the mitigating evidence, once again, the victim was Charles Jones. He went by Julio Foolio in his music. There were 5 suspects in total, but Alicia Andrews, her case was separated from the rest of theirs. All right. And so Rashad Murphy and Davion Murphy, they so their mitigators or their aggravators is being convicted of the attempted red rum, but that was from this incident. But still, like, that's so being convicted of that, knowingly creating a great risk of death to many people, and being a criminal gang member. There was probably one more too, probably the initial incident. So Rashad Murphy's defense attorney gets up, and because each one of them, except for Isaiah's attorney gave his opening statement today, and Rashad Murphy, his defense attorney talked about that he had a full psychological evaluation prior to this trial, And he was diagnosed with PTSD, grew up in a rough neighborhood, experienced a number of traumas, received his GED, took parenting classes, helped raise his younger siblings. He was removed from the home and placed in foster care, and they described him as a good father and that he has no other prior convictions. Those were my notes from his defense attorney's opening statements. For Rashad Murphy, his attorney has not started presenting evidence yet. So then Shawn's attorney gets up and he describes that Shawn had a childhood with some instability. Now, that instability was moving with the military, and talked about a history of abuse by his father, that he was barely 18 years old at the time of this incident, that judgment and impulse control is still maturing. Now, they did not have an expert. They didn't have an expert come in to testify about that. He's currently 20 years old. And the defense attorney says that he's not beyond hope or redemption. He described him as loving, respectful, a good student, loved his family, went on missions trips. And the attorney specifically said he has a life worth saving. So then Davion Murphy's attorney gets up and talks about the fact that that an individual shouldn't be judged based on one incident. Now, I think Davion has a history of like a lot of other crimes. So I think based on the neuropsychologist that testified today, he talked about Davion running from the police. And there were so I think Davion might be one of the defendants. I think Davion and maybe Rashad, they both might have histories of like a lot of aggression. Isaiah and Shawn, it doesn't sound like they had histories of being aggressive in the community prior to this incident that people were aware of. Now, let me know in the chat. I heard something about a pew pew situation in Mississippi, but I don't know if that was hearsay or was that a rumor. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. Like it sounded like Shawn might have been involved in an incident, but like this is like I saw it in the chat somewhere and I couldn't find a news article or any reporting of it. And if it happened when he was a juvenile, that information might be sealed and his attorney might have fought to keep that out of the trial. I have no clue. But that did not come up during any of his mitigating evidence. So back to Davion. His attorney talked about that a neuropsychologist is going to talk about his childhood trauma, his intellectual struggles, his low IQ, that he had an IEP, an individualized education plan. When he was 12 years old, his father and uncle were arrested and charged with murder, and his father and uncle are both serving life in prison. He grew up in Jacksonville. Violence and death were the norm. Grew up without a father figure. He was his defense attorney talked about it first. He was pew-pewed because he had an injury to his groin. And that kind of sounds like a woman. Either you do that to yourself on accident, or it seems like something. I don't know that for sure. We don't know what happened with the incident of why he was pew-pewed in the groin, but like, I don't know, like that. I've heard of sometimes people accidentally doing that to themselves or yeah. So I have questions, but I don't have answers about that one. Multiple family members and close friends were pew-pewed and died. And they also did brain scans, and they are going to talk about that he has global brain injuries. There have been discovery issues that came up. Thank you for this. Y'all are the best. So I'm going to come back to the discovery issues. So Shawn was arrested for a shooting that injured 3 people in Mississippi when he was 17 or 18. Yeah, I think that was kept out. I don't know that the jury, because everybody's presenting him as this like positive. I don't know, like everybody's presenting him like he just got caught up with the wrong crowd. That's how they are presenting Shawn. Wow. Okay. And that might be so prejudicial and if it did happen when he was 17, that might be why it's not coming up now. But when he got on the stand and talked about his excellent character, if his defense attorney got that sealed and kept from in front of the jury, because the jury not knowing that might save his life. I don't know if it will, but it might. Because if the jury knew that, because that was not the image that was presented by his witnesses, in my just personal opinion. Wow. Okay, so this was according to thank you for the sources, a Fox 13 Memphis article dated May 25th, 2023. Thank you so much. Y'all are the best. Y'all are the best. So back to the discovery issues. So the defense's clinical neuropsychologist, he relied on 700 pages of medical records that the state's expert had not seen. And today, the state was provided with that information, and that expert is probably going to like stay up and they're going to bill. So whatever that expert's going to bill $200, they're going to bill 400, whatever like that expert is going to bill hours tonight because that expert, because the state is going to cross-examine. And then I believe the state has an expert to rebut the testimony of the brain experts for Davion. We'll see how that goes. I am keeping an eye on that. I'm keeping an eye on that one right there. All right. So let's see. So there were multiple like lay witnesses, so people that knew because the first expert just talked about the jail system and the different programs that are available and the difference between death row and the regular jail population. And he almost made it sound like the Florida prison system needs young, strong people to do their work for them because he's like they're required to work. Individuals on death row have the option, like they can work if they want to, but they don't have to. But other inmates have to work. And so it was almost like that expert was trying to portray that it was more of a punishment for life in prison, which because he also talked about the fact that on death row they get their own TV versus in the life without the possibility of parole, they have to share the community TV. And so he talked about all of that. I'm going to move on from that part. Shawn's his former guidance counselor from middle school. Now they kind of glazed over him being multiracial and that maybe there might have been some issues with identity. And so his mother is African American. I do not, well, based on his grandmother, I'm guessing because his grandmother was white. I don't believe we saw his father. I could be wrong. I have notes. It's been a long 2 days. Because sometimes I'm listening as I'm working on reports or I'm doing notes. I'm kind of doing other things. But and they shared photos from their international trips. So Shawn was able to travel on a whole bunch. He was able to go to a bunch of different countries with the school. He was a part of a magnet program. He was in a college preparatory middle school, where in middle school they were taking high school level classes. It sounds like he had every opportunity kind of given and handed to him on a silver platter. And my personal thoughts, it seems like he did not make good choices. Now, what things impacted him not making those choices? Because of all the defendants, he seems like the brightest. I don't know that for sure, but at least two of the individuals they both had IEPs. And just because somebody has an IEP does not mean that they're not bright. But he seemed to be, because they kind of tried to portray him as this naive person. And I don't know that he's as naive as they were trying to make him out to be. But those are my personal thoughts. I don't know that to be true. Okay. Like that's just based on some of the things that we were hearing, because he would ask his attorney to, like, so if his guidance counselor was on the stand, his attorney would ask for a moment to confer with her client, and he would kind of whisper to her, and then she would go back, and it seemed like she would ask whatever questions he kind of wanted to elicit from that particular witness. He seemed to be very active in his defense, and I wasn't surprised that he testified. I think there was a narrative that he wanted to put out about himself, and so that was that part. There were some friends of his that testified, and they talked about going skydiving on for their birthday. Some of these witnesses, the state had no questions for. His maternal grandmother described him as a good baby, life of the party. You could tell that she was getting emotional at times. And Shawn's stepfather testified. He met Shawn's mother while they were both stationed in Japan. One of them was in the Air Force, the other was in the Marines. I forget who was who. And they were married and divorced in 2020. And this person, Shawn's stepfather, said that moving around really did not negatively affect him. And they talked about an incident where Shawn ran away while he was in California and alleged harm by his father. The father's mother actually told the exact same story and said that she doesn't have a good relationship with her son. Oh, this must have been the step grandmother. No, sorry, the paternal grandmother. So the paternal grandmother talked about the fact, because the paternal grandmother, I don't think the incident of alleged physical harm was ever reported to the police or social services or any of those things. It doesn't sound like custody was ever amended. And so just general tips. If you are aware that a child is in danger and was not safe, making sure to get that information to appropriate authorities. And if someone's in therapy, so if I have a client that alleges past harm and they're under the age of 18 and the incident happened, I would still have to like call and report that. I forget, I didn't notice who yawned during that. Shawn was the one that was crying. So he cried during the verdict. I don't know if his tears, so that's what you don't, he seems like, because he got emotional toward the end of his sister's testimony. So you'll see pictures of him out in the media of him like crying at different times. But the point where he started crying, it wasn't when they were like showing pictures. It was when she was about to be cross-examined. That's when I saw it. Now maybe his eyes were watering up and I don't know. But it seems like he's trying to show remorse. So I don't know. It is what it is. Um, Many of the witnesses did ask not to be shown on video, and I don't blame them. I especially because there is some like gang activity that's affiliated with all of this, and some people might be afraid of retaliation or how testifying in this might impact their job or different things like that. So I totally got that. Let me see. Shawn's mother testified, and the judge kind of had to remind her that because I that she couldn't get into the details of the case, or that all she just need to focus on providing like a positive, mitigating evidence about her son. And she described that Shawn's father had a volatile temper and that the dad was insecure and got more volatile as Shawn got older. And that's where I wish they had gotten Shawn some therapy, because I wonder if there was some insecurity in Shawn as well. Because it sounds like he was very bright, and it sounds like he did go to college. He went to community college and he went to college. But like he seemed to connect with people that were involved in crimes, and that's a bit of a problem. And so I don't know that he ever got any type of because I think if he had received therapy, they probably would have talked about it. And a guidance counselor continuing to provide mentorship is not therapy. Um, and it reminded me of some other penalty phase cases that we've covered where everybody's just like, that's not the person I knew, but it's like, but that's this event happened. And so, yeah. Sean's sister took the stand and talked about that they had a good relationship. And the sister did become emotional as they were sharing the pictures of them as a kid and him holding her first child. Because I think in court, I think she brought because she testified today along with the mother. And so I think they had the kids in court today. And at the end of court today, the judge said to please not have the young children in the courtroom. And so then Sean took the stand and I was not ready. So I was not expecting him to take the stand. So he talked about wanting to take responsibility, express his feelings about the situation. He talked about feeling remorseful. He described it as a traumatic experience and that he was 18 years old when he was arrested, that in jail he's participated in religious programs, led a few prayer cycles, prayer circles, tries to take others under his wing. But that's where I'm just like, but do you have potential to be a cult leader? Because he seems very charismatic and very bright. And so that's where like sometimes like but because he talks about wanting to make sure the other people don't go down the wrong path and the path he chose. I don't know. It is what it is. It is what it is. All right. So, and then he started talking about that God can use anything for good, that he's grateful for this experience and that it shaped his future. I'm paraphrasing that, and that he wants to have a humble and righteous life. So then on cross-examination, I think it all fell apart because the state did not hold back any punches. They were like, "You want to take responsibility now? Your experience was traumatic." And so the state was asking him these questions. And then he remembers nothing from that night because the state tries to show him a picture of him holding an AR, the number before 16. Like they show him holding a pew pew. And he's just like, I don't remember. He got cross amnesia very, very strong. Um, he just wants to focus on today and move forward. The state asked him about driving his mother's car to the crime and then taking the car to his grandmother's house and wiping it down after. And the state asked, were you remorseful when you dropped off the car that you used in a crime at your grandmother's house? And he just said, today I would like to express my remorse. And he did not remember anything in detail. The state asked, didn't you go clubbing that night and you were drinking? Was it Dom Perignon? I don't know. Like they said the type of liquor, I guess he was drinking. And he's not 21 now. But he went to the club and I guess he went club. He was like, it was my sister's birthday. Okay. They talked about his extremely privileged life and uh and all the opportunity because they tried to list all the positive male role models. And in my opinion, it seemed like he tried to minimize the role. He's like, but that was all before middle school. And he kind of made it sound like there weren't as many men in his life, that he was mostly surrounded by women later. And I don't know if that was true. It is what it is. I don't know. Um, he talked about being raised to have a moral life. So then the defense redirected and he talked about how Jacksonville culture was completely different. He didn't know about the streets. He wanted to be in regular school versus magnet school and high school. And that's when he found out about drugs, people dying, and he was curious. I don't know that he should have said that he was curious. The I was curious part caught me like, were you curious about like, were you attracted to that lifestyle? Were you attracted to that drill scene? And like, did you think that was cool? Like holding weapons, doing these crimes, my group against your group. So that's where it was like, hmm, I don't know if his attorney would have wanted him to say he was curious, but it is what it is. And he mentioned listening to the music. He described himself as being naive, gullible, and impressionable, and that he asked God what God wants for him. And God said his calling is to be there for the youth and to keep them from the streets. So, for this case, I could understand if the jury decided to give him life in prison because he wasn't this, but the jury isn't going to know about the other incident in Mississippi. Okay. But, so I don't know if the jury will decide to give him the death penalty or not. I don't know. All right. So then Isaiah Chance, he was not. So his attorney gets up and says that he was not one of the shooters. That he was, I think he was 20 at the age of at the time of the crime. That he's borderline intellectually disabled. He has 3 children. I think he's 23. Yeah, I think he was 20 at the time of the crime, and he's 23 now, something like that. He was born premature. He has an IQ of 71. He wanted to be liked and fit in, and that he needed structure. So, Dr. Nix, this was his stepfather, talked about meeting Isaiah when he was 6 years old, that he was his stepfather for about 6 years. Isaiah had learning challenges, a speech impediment, and mentioned that he wanted to be a pastor when he was 9 or 10 years old. Isaiah's father asked the stepfather, Dr. Nix, to step back in some of his punishment, and he felt like that usurped his role to be, and that's where, but he thought a long time. It took him a long time to kind of get that out and to talk about that. The judge asked, so then he has a doctorate in theology. Because they're calling him doctor, and I was like, "What's his doctorate in?" I believe his doctorate is in theology. He ran for public office. That came out, and he was really upset. He prepared a statement to read to the jury, and he was not allowed to read it. So some of the things that were in that statement, even the defense agreed that there was information in there that wasn't appropriate for the jury. So he was only able to answer the questions. He was not able to read the statement that he prepared. During a break, the judge asked him about Jacksonville, and that the judge wasn't aware about the level of gang troubles in Jacksonville. And then he talked about that some people call Jacksonville Little Chicago, and that among the youth, homicide and self were the number one concerns among youth in Jacksonville. And so I wanted to share that. I did link. So one of the last trials I covered, the victim of that case, the family put together Kayla's House, and that's a nonprofit organization that's meant to address violence in South Florida. Jacksonville isn't quite South Florida, but I wanted to share that resource again. And so it's listed down in the description. And so, yes. All right. So now, let me know if you have any questions about any of the other witnesses for Isaiah. Isaiah's father testified, talked about their childhood, talked about hardships, and his grandmother testified. Isaiah's father's ex-girlfriend testified. And then there was a licensed psychologist. So she was there to provide psychological mitigation. She evaluated him in person, and he was friendly, pleasant, and engaged during testing. He became tearful during the interview when talking about his mother and described his mother as his heart. He did not present with any major signs of anxiety, depression, or psychosis. With the academic testing, reading was at the 5th grade level. Math was at the 3rd grade level, and spelling was at the 8th grade level. And his comprehension, his reading comprehension, was at the 7th grade level. She didn't say which test she gave. I believe she gave a brief a brief achievement academic test. I believe she gave the RAT. She didn't say it, but the WRAT. I used to administer that in forensic settings back during my internship and back during my earlier years of training. She gave him the WAIS, so that's the adult intelligence test for adults, and his IQ came back to be 71. And that's at the low end range of, and it's close to an intellectual disability. So there are laws legally about individuals that are diagnosed with an intellectual disability, IQ 70 or lower, they can't. I think it's IQ plus adaptive functioning. But if they meet criteria for an intellectual disability, I do believe that there are certain laws about those individuals not being eligible for the DP. And so his verbal ability was in the low average range. His processing speed was 69, which is in that extremely low range. And sorry, PRI. And we both did the same thing. Perceptual reasoning ability. It's not processing speed. So it was perceptual reasoning ability. The PRI was 69. And that looks at problem solving, fluid abstract thinking, organizing parts into a whole. And that's also closely tied to math. And so his difficulties with math combined with that low PRI, that makes sense to me. He also had lower working memory. His working memory or short term memory was in the borderline range, score of 71. And his processing speed index, that was a time task, that was 81 in the low average range. And she indicated that a 12-point spread could be indicative of a learning disability. I don't always, because sometimes there are spreads for various reasons. His academic records were consistent, where he had received a full scale IQ of 81 at the age of 4. But testing at the age of 4 is different because then at the age of 10, he received an IQ of 70. And then at the age of 12, his IQ was 63. And because he was tested at 10 and then at 12, um, uh, that's where I'm not sure. It sounded like the family was against medicating for ADHD, but that he had signs and symptoms of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Um, uh, and she did diagnose him with ADHD and borderline intellectual functioning. The state came back on cross examination and attempted to attack her opinion because she talked about him being vulnerable and naive. And so the state was like, which test looked at vulnerability or naivete? And there wasn't a particular test for that. And there wasn't a test because she described him as more of a follower than a leader, and there wasn't a particular test for that either. Um, the godmother, I believe this is still for Isaiah, said that he never lied to her, and that's where like, oh, and mm, so I don't know if that was true or not, but that's how she felt. And the state brought up that I guess she helped pay for some of the drill rap videos, and I don't know how the jury's going to feel about that. But I don't know that she fully knew like what that entailed and everything. His mother testified, and on cross examination, the state brought up the fact that he graduated with a high school diploma, and the mother described him as socially perceptive. And the prior psychologist had kind of tried to minimize some of his like, so I don't know, but that I noticed the difference between those two. Yeah. Yep. 70 is the official cutoff for the DP. And some people have argued because intelligence can be in a range. So sometimes individuals with like 71, because if a person is tested again, sometimes their true IQ falls within a range. And the next psychologist, the forensic psychologist, got into that a little bit more than Isaiah's attorney got into that, because an IQ of 71 has a range that'll be in the 60s and then higher, because you look for their true score. So the measured whatever score I receive, if they're tested again, I would expect it to be within a certain range. And let's see. All right. So then uh, is it Eisenstein? Dr. Eisenstein tested Davion Murphy. He described him as very cooperative and talked about some of the malingering measures that he gave. He did about 22 hours for his entire evaluation. And that might include reviewing records. I'm not sure. They talked about the fact that Davion attended 14 schools. He was tested at an early age, repeated several grades, and he was tested at 8 years old. He received so on the WISC, so the Weschler Intelligence Scale for Children, he received a score of 81, which is in the 10th percentile. And his testing with this psychologist was lower. And we only have those two tests. And I would personally, if I was on the other side, now, some of his lower IQ could be due to his because we don't know the different scores, like what his verbal score was, what his memory scored. Like they didn't break down the different scores for him. They just gave the overall IQ score, because the verbal score, since he struggled so much in school, he might have missed some learning. And with moving around, it sounds like discipline was a major issue for him. And this expert, he likes to talk. And the state objected a little bit more, and the defense attorney kind of had to wrangle in the testimony, because some of the things he said, I don't know if some of the things he said, I don't know that it was great for the defense, me listening, because I wonder if the state's expert is going to evaluate Davion for antisocial personality disorder, because Davion might meet criteria because he probably would have met criteria for conduct disorder, and then he may meet criteria for antisocial personality disorder. I don't know that the state had somebody do a full psychological. I know the state has Dr. Werner, and I want to say Dr. Werner was in the Sarah Boone trial too. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. I'm almost positive it was Dr. Werner. That name is just too familiar. Or it was with the another Florida case. I was almost positive it was Sarah Boone. But based on some of the things that did come up, I would be looking at, did he meet criteria for antisocial personality disorder? With his IEP, he was labeled as an exceptional student and diagnosed with ADHD combined type, a global learning disability, nonverbal learning disability, and a specific learning disability. And they had some language around him really struggling academically. He was in multiple schools, had a bunch of discipline problems. He repeated a whole bunch of grades. A whole bunch of grades. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Werner was Sarah Boone. Yeah, so we'll get to see Dr. Werner again. I would be interested to see her thoughts based on his history and his school records and everything, because he was lying. He was kicked out of his mother's home in 10th grade and went to live with his paternal grandmother. But he might have been 18, because he repeated the 3rd grade. He repeated the 4th grade. he repeated 11th grade. And so like I think he was older. Um, and with Isaiah, he might have been kind of embarrassed. So I think the the psychologist talked about he was trying to get things right and he tries to come off as being smart and intelligent. I don't know if Davion was trying to come off as smart and intelligent. I don't know if he was. This expert also talked about multiple head injuries. He crashed a golf cart when he was into a golf cart into a car when he was around 7 or 8 years old and reported having headaches after that. He was a passenger in a car that hit a tree and he ran away and did not seek treatment. And then he had the pew pew wound to his groin at 20 years old. I wonder how he feels about all that information being out there, but it was. He was involved in a police chase. And after that, they did a coma scale and he was non responsive to some questions. They did a CT scan and that doctor wanted them to do a MRI, but like this is looking back. That didn't happen at the time. November 2023, he was involved in a car of he was involved in an accident with a truck. He was in a car and an accident with a truck. He reported hitting his head very hard. And this doctor talked about the synergistic impact of brain damage, that like one injury to the brain that sometimes, so when a person has a coma, I'm sorry, has a concussion, you have to be really careful. Because the brain tries to protect from future injury. And and so those were some of the things that they talked about. I don't know that anything in his brain, because it just sounds like he grew up around a lot of violence. There was a lot of community violence. Like, it just sounds like there was a lot. And they did bring up the fact that his father being arrested and sent to jail for life impacted him. He self-reported anxiety and depression and was prescribed Seroquel, which is, they described it as an antipsychotic, and it's technically in the antipsychotic, but it could sometimes it's used for severe aggression, for anxiety, or I'm not a medical doctor. This is just general information. Sometimes it's used for stabilizing mood. So I've had some clients with bipolar disorder or other diagnoses that have ended up on different types of medication. But he was, so once again, diagnosed with ADHD, and this doctor believes that he's intellectually disabled. He also received SSI. I forgot if I mentioned that. And then they showed actual like test results. And I don't know if they should have, but like, because they explained one of the tests of executive function, like they explained it a lot. They really, really explained it a lot. But okay, it is what it is. Um, and he talked about his different scores on different areas of testing. His WAIS, so his Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, his IQ score was 72. And then he felt that it should be adjusted for the Flynn effect. And so the Flynn effect is that IQ can drop over time, and he was administered an older test. But that's where I don't know. I don't know if he was giving full effort. He might have been, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But they did mention he did not meet legal criteria for having an intellectual disability, to not be able to be considered for the death penalty. He described him having emotional disturbance, and he lacked the capacity to appreciate his conduct, that he has neuropsychological deficits, lack of impulse control, difficulty with judgment and reasoning, and that he recommended a brain scan. And so he is going to do a brain scan. And so like there was so much information. So much information. So, what is the youngest age you can diagnose somebody with antisocial? So, this is a great question. So, children are sometimes diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder. I don't like that that diagnosis because with oppositional defiant disorder, most individuals with ADHD struggle with being told what to do. And sometimes they might need to do it their way. They might struggle. And so sometimes positive behavior reinforcement can really be helpful for kids with ADHD. They also need structure. So I don't think Davion, I think I think his family was likely chaotic. It does not sound like he had a stable childhood growing up. He likely experienced forms of harm to him. He likely witnessed things. His father, we don't know who his father unalived, but his father did something to someone. And sometimes with gang activity, sometimes there can be like family. And I'm not saying because I don't know what his father did. I don't know that his father was in anything. We're just speculating here. Now, conduct disorder. So I do diagnose conduct disorder. That is where children start breaking the law. So children stealing cars, stealing from stores, uh, making, I don't know, like there you start to see like a lack of empathy. You start to see certain things. Now, all of these things can be treated. Treatment can be effective. It sounds like Davion mostly received medication. I don't know because I think he needed stability. I think he needed support, but also he needed to make different decisions. And so we talk about nature versus nurture, and often it's a combination of both. Um, and so personality disorders can't be diagnosed until after the age of 18. So you would never diagnose a child with antisocial personality disorder. You might have some concerns about certain things along the way, and that's where you get treatment. So often, children with oppositional defiant disorder, the biggest treatment for that is family therapy, multisystemic family therapy. It's called MST. That because often what's happening is I don't know how much supervision he had. I don't know how much guidance and direction he had. And so his life compared to Shawn, like Shawn seemed to have like structure, he had supervision. Davion did not seem to have any of that if we're looking at the different defendants. Um and but Davion had actual aggression in school. Like he had aggression across like in the community. He's and his psychologist is the one that brought up the running from the police. The defense did not ask additional questions. This expert still has to be cross-examined by the state. So that is going to happen tomorrow. Okay? All right. And so I love the lurkers. I don't mind if y'all lurk. I appreciate y'all's questions and engagement in the community. It's super helpful. But with this case, I wanted to make sure that we understood the intelligence testing results and just some of the difference between um, just because the defense is literally fighting for these individuals' lives. And the state, if the state thought any of this was like a reason to take it off the table legally, they would. And I think the state has a different perspective. Because Isaiah wasn't one of the ones that had the like that pew pewed, I don't know. So I don't know what I would do if I was on this jury. I don't know. And it will be up to the jury to decide all of this. And it could become an issue on appeal, the fact that they're deciding all of this together. And that are these jurors doing a good job looking at them individually, or are they looking at them as a group? So if all four of them end up getting one sentence um, on appeal, uh, their appellate attorney might try to redo the sentencing phase and just have the juror consider their information and not hear all the information from all the other defendants. And so we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Um, I appreciate you all. I am also following, let's see. I did watch there somebody did a really thorough if you're following the whole David Celeste, the murder of Celeste. It has over like 1 million views, I think, but somebody did a background. Let me find the video. It should be in my most recent watch. But they did a kind of like a deep dive that I think was well done. A lot of the psychology that they talk about in the video does seem accurate. Um, and so I wanted to, um, I can't get to my history. Where's my do 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 do? Normally it shows up right here. There we go, history. So let me find it real quick because it was a really good evil. Yeah. So Jay Wisdom did a video, The Warning Signs. And I do think that video was well done. Lots of trigger, like it's a tough case to follow, but I did think it was very accurate. If you are watching this, come on over to Trial Live TV. They are streaming it live. I have a link to that channel down in the description. If you're not already subbed there, I like that channel. And so I appreciate you all. Be kind, don't do crimes, and I will see you all next time. Have a good one. Bye.